Who do you think you are? You're worthless. You're stupid. You're fucking idiots. Have you ever heard those things before? Maybe other people have told you that, but the worst is when it comes from yourself. In this video, I'm gonna tell you the 4 types of negative thoughts that will ruin your fucking life if you don't stop them. And I'm also gonna tell you how to tame those inner voices in your head, that inner critic. So stay tuned.
I think we all have them when everyone just tries to
Limiting beliefs, limiting mindset, this is really the #1 thing that is holding my clients back from achieving what they want in their lives, to fulfill their purpose and really to find, clarity in their lives, right? So really, if you can handle those 4 things, really you'll be more successful in your life. The first type of negative belief is self-limiting beliefs. Beliefs that are self-limiting, right? What do I mean by self-limiting is that basically you put an artificial boundary that does not exist around a certain thing. So for example, you believe that it's impossible to achieve a certain amount of money doing what you want, right? I've had one of my clients say that yeah, I can make a lot of money, but I feel like, this is be really hard and it's going to be pretty much impossible if I want to make money on YouTube. And he was saying that, and I'm making money on YouTube, and I was telling him, well, dude, this is just like a belief. Is that like a true statement, or is that just an opinion or a belief? Self-limiting beliefs are beliefs that basically put artificial limitations or boundaries on things that don't really have or shouldn't really have those limitations. Those are limitations that you invented, or limitations that maybe someone told you when you were younger and you just adopted that limitation. So for example, money doesn't grow on trees, or that, I cannot be successful in that area. It'll be too hard, too difficult. That's impossible. He grew up with a successful family. That's why he was successful. Or he was the son of Tiger Woods or whatever stupid shit, and that's why he's successful. It's sort of like those limiting beliefs. So do you have any beliefs like that tells you you cannot do something? If you have a belief that tells you, I can't do this, I cannot do this, I cannot do that, then basically you're having a self-limiting belief. The second type of negative beliefs are assumptions, right? Predictions about things in the future that you can't really predict, or sort of assumptions as to how things are or how you believe things to be when they're not so. Right, so assumptions are basically subjective interpretations of what you think is, but actually it isn't. So you make this assumption, for example, that, oh, this person believes that I'm a piece of shit, or this person hates me, or this person, they would never want to be friends with me, or this girl would never think I'm attractive, this guy would never think I'm attractive. All these things that you tell yourself are really just, assumptions. It's like you're assuming something without actual evidence of it, right? That's key here. Is assumption is sort of, you base it off you don't even know what you base it on. It's just a thought that just automatically arrives. And that's the thing with negative beliefs, is that they just arrive. They don't wait for you to, call upon them. They don't wait for you to welcome them. They just welcome themselves. They just arrive and they're just there. And that's an assumption. It's just an assumption that just occurs. It's like sort of you're trying to mind read things that you cannot really read. You try to read the minds of people. You try to read into your future and all the negative things that can happen. Those are assumptions. The third type of negative belief, negative thoughts that run into your head are reruns. Reruns are so destructive. I think this is one of my most destructive type of negative beliefs, is that when you replay a past failure that you had in your life. For example, on those free consultations, sometimes I get amazing people, sometimes I get like some of the worst people you could imagine. Not gonna say their names or whatever, but I just get like horrible people and I just replay those negative things into my head. I just replay those negative clients, those negative people that, I shouldn't have taken on as clients, or like, it's just like when I go before a call, those things rerun into my head, and it just makes the whole thing worse, right? So you got to learn to manage them. So a rerun is basically a thing or maybe an event that happened into your life that you remember, that is just, when you think about it, it just ruins your life, right? And it's like you trying to do this thing, but you just remember the times you failed at that thing, and now you no longer want to do it, right? So for example, a huge, very, very common thing that happens with guys is like, for example, in elementary school, you like this girl and you get rejected by that girl. Okay, now you have this scar. In high school, same thing happens to you. And now when you happen to go to college, university, you're like, fuck man, I've got rejected by girls twice. Like, I'm never gonna try this again. I'm never gonna talk to another girl again. And like, it's like, anytime that you have a crush on a girl, you have this huge pain of the past of being hurt and you don't want to be hurt again. And just this rerun, always telling you, you know what, this happened last time you got rejected, people laughed at you, never do it again. So this is how the past can haunt you, because inner critic, what it does, it just tries to protect you from harm, right? So that's why it just keeps replaying those negative things so you don't have those negative things again. But the problem here is that it holds you from moving to a brighter future. You're too past focused. When you're too past focused, you cannot move on to the future. And to move into the future, you have to let go of the past. To move into the future, learn to move into the future is the only thing that will help you overcome those reruns, in my opinion. The fourth type of negative thoughts that enters your mind that can destroy your life is other people's thoughts. Other people's thoughts. You know, have you ever thought and considered that actually the voice in your head, some of the things that are being said, that's not actually coming from you. It's just actually a critical voice from your critical father or your critical mother who told you you would never amount to anything, or that you could never become a public speaker, which is what I like to say that happened to me when I was 17. My dad told me that. So when you hear those things, can you realize like, wait, maybe this is just what someone else told me, that, you know, this is not actually me. All right, so let's say you're about to do something, like you're about to sing on stage, and you remember, like, then you just have this voice in your head that tells you you would never become a good singer, right? And that was just what your mom told you a long time ago, or maybe you just told yourself that a long time ago, whatever. But maybe it's that something that someone told you a while ago, and that you just integrated it into yourself, and you just have to notice it, right? Notice it, whether it be someone else's expectation, someone else's guilt put on you. Just notice that this is not coming from you. So here are the 4 types of negative thoughts that can occur into your mind. Now let me tell you the 4 ways that your inner critic basically will personify as, or will show up as. And I like to call these the 4 types of inner critics, right? Now that you know what type of thoughts are limiting you and holding you back in life, now you can look into, you know, how this works. How does your inner critic work? Because, you know, if you understand how your inner critic works, it's a lot easier to manage it. So here are the 4 ways that your inner critic can show up as. So number 1 is the worrier. The worrier. Basically, how that inner critic shows up is that it always looks at how things could go wrong, or how things could go bad. And always worried about all the negative things that could occur if you did this, right? It's so like all these anxieties, all these fears holding you back. Basically, the worrier is driven by fear. The worry is always thinking about when you want to do something, it thinks of all the endless possibilities of how it could go wrong. Instead of thinking of that one way how it could go right, it looks at how it could go wrong. The inner worrier is the one who's like, what if this? Well, what if that happens? What if like I get ridiculed if I decide to start my own business? What if my parents, you know, kick me out of the house? If I, you know, want to stop studying my stupid engineering degree I don't give a shit about, right? All these things. This is the worrier. The second type of inner critic is the critic. I just call it the critic. Why? Because it criticizes you. It judges you, it compares you, it evaluates you, you know, in comparison to other people, for example. So this happens, for example, you scroll on social media and then you see someone like highly successful, you're like, fuck man, I'm such a miserable piece of shit in comparison. Or fuck man, I wish I had this car. Fuck man, I wish I finished my degree and didn't drop out of school because I feel like shit now that I have no education and I have no job, now living in my basement and playing video games. I fucking suck. The critic, what it does is that it never sees you as enough. You have to do something, or you have to have a certain type of status, or have a certain type of looks, or have a whatever you gotta have to be enough And even when you have that, your critic will always find a way to criticize that and tell you you're not enough. The third way in which your inner critic can show up is as the victim. The victim, always saying, poor me, this is not, it's because of this guy or that girl or my parents that my life is into shit right now. There's nothing I can do about it. It's sort of like this hopelessness, this learned helplessness, where you believe that you cannot be helped, that no one can help you. And I see it a lot in my comments. I think this is like one of the most common comments that I get on my videos, especially the ones on like emotional neglect or emotional numbness. People just talk about like, they talk about like how like their parents mistreated them and now like their life is to shit. And I can feel a lot of the victim energy in the comments. The inner voice of the victim basically tells you that it's not your fault, it's everyone else's fault, and it's the environment's fault, and there's nothing you can do about it. The world is all shut down, everything is locked down, there's nothing I can do, and this is helpless. There's no way I can make money and be financially free, whatever. This is how it can show up as. And the fourth way that your inner critic can show up as is the perfectionist, right? Basically that inner voice telling you, well, you gotta do this, like this has to be, you're not enough unless you do this, right? This is not good enough. This is not, you need to improve this, you need to improve that. You have to be doing more, you have to be taking more action, which is, by the way, once in a while, actually, this is fine, to snap you out of, being in a lazy, numb state. But, at a certain point, this can become a huge issue where everything has to be so perfect that you can't even take the first step because you're afraid that it's not going to be good enough or it's not going to be perfect enough. That becomes a huge issue, right? You're like, oh, well, you know what? I'll do it when I'll have the perfect lighting. I'll shoot this video when I have more energy, when I'll no longer be feeling tired. Or you know what? I'll work out tomorrow when, I'll have all my supplements, or when I'll have like my good meal. I'll talk to this girl after I've worked out, after I've had a haircut, after I've looked good, and after I've had plenty of muscle, whatever you need. After I get my new glasses, I'll talk to this girl. This is just madness. It's like the perfectionist inner critic is really one of the most insidious forms of inner criticism because it disguises itself as something good. Really disguises itself as a virtue, as sort of like a striving towards perfection, a striving towards the best. But really, perfectionism is pretty much fear. It's fear that you're gonna put yourself out there and you're gonna fail. It's the fear that you're gonna launch a product, you're gonna start like your own business, or you're gonna start your own endeavor and it's gonna fail, all right? So those are the ways that your inner critic can show up as, and those are the negative thoughts that you have to deal with, right? And what I like to say to all my clients is that 90% of the battle is awareness. If you're just aware of your inner critic, if you're just aware of how it manifests and how it can, skew your mind in subjective ways that are not aligned with how things really are, if you just take a step back and you look at that for how it is, then really 90% of the battle is already won. Because just by bringing your awareness to that thought, it already dissolves the thought and the thought loses power over you. Right? When for example, that you have a negative thought like, oh wait, this is my inner worrier talking, just worrying about all the bullshit shit that can happen. So just pay attention to it. Now you have awareness. So this is 90% of the battle. So if you want that other 10%, don't just stop right there, right? You're gonna see videos show up here that's gonna teach you how to overcome your inner critic. And also there's gonna be another video here that's gonna be recommended basically according to the YouTube algorithm. So I'll see you in the next video.